All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pistonhead podcast. Hopefully you remember what I look like. I shaved for the occasion. Obviously life is fucking insane. So that's where we'll leave it. But new FD season, super pumped. I got my buddy Kyle on with me today.
Yo.
Yeah, Kyle, another giant FD fan, another big car fan. Also works with me at ZZX. So we get to hang out. We don't get to hang out as much as we used to because shit changes. But
we still talk drifting pretty much all day long. So
it's true. It's true. Like it's kind of like we'll start talking work stuff, and then it just goes back to car stuff. Like within like 3 or 4 minutes, and we're like, okay, we're gonna send this report, and then it's like, so who do you think's gonna take it?
Have to make a concerted effort to try and stay on task.
Yeah, it's kind of a problem, but a good problem.
Yeah.
So enough of you guys bugged me to bring back the podcast, and this is it. And then after I'm like, there's no other podcast going on. I was like, Kyle, you got to get on me. We got to do this. And then Maximum Driftcast announces like the next day that they're bringing it back too, which I'm happy. I really am. I'm super happy they're bringing it back because I love listening to the show. So
I'm sure we have lots to talk about. It's going to be an interesting year. So
yeah. So where did we leave off last year? I mean, Vaughn and Dye retired. I mean, that's kind of retired.
And that has like big implications, right? Like you have the whole RTR thing with opening up a seat, but not just that. Now Chelsea has to he's lead driver. So, I mean, in my opinion, there were a couple of things that happened last year that hurt his chances in the championship towards the end, namely Long Beach, I guess. Again, right, there's a little bit of controversy there, but without Vaughn there, with Chelsea being the lead driver, I really think he's going to run away with it, or at least be like way more, not that he wasn't a contender, but it's going to be, I think he's going to be kind of king of the hill this year.
I'm super curious, like what Vaughn's involvement's going to be like if he's going to be in the pits and shit, because like I really think that Vaughn chills Chelsea out quite a lot. And I mean, obviously I'm not there to know, but I have a strong feeling that there's a lot of conversations between the two where it's Vaughn being like, okay, like here's the strategy. Like this is what you kind of need to remember about this. So
and hopefully he can, be there also to mentor Adam. Not that he needs mentoring, but you know what I mean? Just on the chilling out, like he said, like what he did with Chelsea and took the no fucks given attitude, dial it back a bit and play a little bit more, I don't want to say safer, but strategic, right? Like there's no point in blowing up your car on a victory lap. And sure enough, he had a couple of victory laps and he didn't blow them up. So,
well, it's like, I mean, he basically took a wild stallion and tamed it to be a quarter horse. Like that's kind of how I feel, right? Like there was so much raw talent in Chelsea just with no finances and no, I don't want to use the word discipline because I don't think that's the right word, but like just chill. Like he had no chill. And then I think they wrangled him.
Drive.
Yeah. I think they wrangled him back too far at one point, and then they kind of let him off the leash a little bit. But I mean, he's still Chelsea at the end of the day. Like he still talks shit. He'll still, if he's upset with another driver, I mean, we saw it with him in Forsberg for a while. I mean, he's still going to, I mean, if you follow him online, Chelsea hasn't fucking changed at all because his comments and stuff are incredible.
I just wonder if, since he's been kind of like had Vaughn at his side, like now that he hasn't been quiet about how he feels about the judging and stuff like that. And last year's whole qualifying debacle. So I don't know what that'll play into it this year. I'm interested to see how the first like session or two of qualifying goes, if everybody's going to be, actually gunning for the scores, or if it's going to be another game, right? Which, to be honest, I kind of liked it. I thought it was interesting because shake it up, right? Because at the end of the day, he still has to put down a run to get in the show. And last year was less of a big deal. But the other point to bring up is this year, there are drivers, right? Like we're not at 32. We're
37.
What is it? 37. Yeah. So you can't just show up to make it in the show anymore.
I mean, it's good. I think FD had this has been an issue this is going to continue to be an issue with Long Beach being the first one, where you're going to have a bunch of people who show up, wreck in Long Beach, and then, that's it. Because you got to remember too, like Long Beach is arguably the toughest round track-wise. It's the first round back, so if you've got a new build that isn't tested, you're going to fucking find out really quick. And, I mean, a part that not a lot of people talk about is it's the most expensive for anybody who doesn't live there. Because, like, hotels are more expensive. If you're on the East Coast, travel is the most expensive. Like, at least if you're up in Washington, hotels are relatively cheap. But, like, I mean, I was looking at going down to Long Beach, and it's like, even for a shitty hotel room, it's like $230 a night. And that's if you can find them right now. I looked at Airbnbs and stuff too, and guys were asking $400 and $500 a night. And I'm like,
Which obviously plays a part. That's something we don't always think of, right? Because you're so used to seeing the top tier teams, money's being thrown around like other motorsports now, but there are still guys that are running on lower budgets, right? And especially the guys just coming up from pro spec, that they don't have the same kind of budget to be able to just go nuts and, ball out at the nicest hotels. Like, it can be a financial hit to go to Long Beach. And then again, if you shunt your car, there's another big chunk of money that you can't afford right at the beginning of the season. So
there's also, and this even came up with Ryan Sage today, which is interesting. There's a lot of talks about tire sponsorships this year being really tough. So obviously with like global supply chain issues being a problem, the actual cost of petroleum going up, which means the cost of rubbers will go up. And the other thing too is like, they're projecting the prices of it because obviously, petroleum going up now means tires are more expensive tomorrow. But a smart company will look at the price now and future it, like get ahead of it.
Yeah.
But Ryan Sage even said, because they were talking about the Forrest Wang thing, which we'll definitely talk about. And he basically, I think he said in the comment, like, if somebody doesn't show up or doesn't have tires, there's going to be a spot open. And what's interesting is I think Forrest is with Accelera. Is it Accelera or Zestino or something?
I haven't followed it.
He's in one of the quote unquote budget brands, which I don't know how the licensing works with FD, if he's allowed to run those or what happens, or if he has to run federal, which I feel bad. I feel bad for anybody who has to run federal because it's not as competitive. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad tire, but it is definitely not a Nitto. It is definitely not a Falcon. Like, I mean, they're behind.
That used to be said not that long ago about GT radials, right?
That's true.
GT radial was a budget tire. Like, I personally ran them on, I had an Audi S4.
Yeah.
And I ran them and everybody made fun of me. And it was like right when they started to become decent tires. And I was like, okay, as soon as I took a couple people for a ride, you realize, okay, they made the switch. So hopefully Federal can get, up there. But like you said, if you're
they have bigger sizes now. Like, I know they're thing, right? Sizing bigger than it was like they had like a 275 or something like that.
Yeah, but you can't say that a 275 Nitto, Federal, and GT Radial are all even in the same ballpark.
Yeah, I know, right? Because that's the FD rule. Like, they have a gauge. It's like, it doesn't matter what's actually printed on the sidewall. They have to pre-vet the tires with their gauge. Because
that's right.
Yeah, it's such a dumb thing. Well, look at the Nitto sidewall, right? Because if you watch those tires deflate, that contact patch is fucking huge.
That's right.
Like Chelsea driving around the pits at like 8 PSI, and you just see the sidewall just rolled over. It's crazy.
But I mean, that's the rule about them debeating tires. That's that's a game changer, really.
Yeah, but then we saw companies like Nitto make with that true, the lip protector, right? Like that became part of it too, because if you see how close it is to the edge of the wheel, it basically just grips it almost it grips onto the top of the lip of the wheel. So that became part of it too. Like, I don't know. I fucking love that tire companies were starting to be like, okay, we want to be good at this sport, and then actually started developing tires for this sport.
Because it's not just compound, and that's what I was kind of getting to is Nitto has so much money in R&D that Valino or even GT Radial has been growing pretty fast the past couple of years, but Federal just doesn't have the funds to be able to develop a sidewall that can fold in and stay inflated, right? Like
they just don't have the time. Like they haven't had the time. That's the biggest thing. So I was just trying to I was going to look up Forrest Wang's tire sponsorship because I'm curious. But yeah, I mean, I on that note, like, I'll look at it later. I'm going to get distracted. I already said I didn't want to do this live because I get too distracted. Yeah, it's interesting, the picks. Like, there's been a lot of arguments about like drivers that shouldn't be there. And like, without naming names, I mean, we can all pick out a few guys that just have not done well for the last 4 or 5 seasons that, I mean, that maybe shouldn't be there anymore. Right? They're still, I mean, they're still on the list. It's, I'll bet you it'll change next year. I'll bet you it'll change next year.
Yes and no, right? Like other motorsports are similar, right? To an extent, it is a business. You need to sell tickets. So they must be bringing something to the table, whether it's diversity or in some cases, you know, that or inferior engine styles or brands, you know, that fight, you know, the Jay-Z versus RB thing, like that was amazing for FD, right?
For FD, it was perfect. I mean, that's what I mean. And just to like correct myself, I can't remember what event it was. Like Kyle Mohan drove incredibly well, but it was like, it might've been Irwindale.
Long Beach.
Was it Long Beach or Irwindale?
Wasn't it? I thought it was Long Beach that he actually like, he was,
it was one of them.
Show.
We're like, I was like, this is it. Like this was it. Yeah. This is the fucking, like, he can do it. He's showing he can do it. And then, I mean, I hope I don't want any driver to do poorly, but it's been a struggle for him. So, but I mean, that's it.
I felt last year's looked like a struggle for everybody.
Right.
And I don't know if it was just the 2020 hangover from the double rounds or what it was, but like uncharacteristic, like for Forsberg to have that kind of mechanical problems, like that's unusual, right? Like his program is pretty stout. You know, Turk did well last year, but Dye, so I'm a big Dye fan. I was pretty upset when he left, right?
Yeah.
He just wasn't there last year, right? Like didn't have it. Gucci was struggling, which, you know, he's been struggling the past couple of years, but it just seemed like everybody was a little bit off last year. So the people like the front runners really stood out. Like Osbo, when he won, it seemed like he won by a landslide because everybody seemed to have trouble behind him or was crashing.
Well, I mean, it shows like the attrition because I mean, we definitely saw some tired cars last year too, which doesn't help. But on that note, I mean, there's a lot of new cars this year.
That's what I was going to bring up about Long Beach. Like this is going to be an event, man, because there's so many new drivers or people in new positions, new cars. Like,
so off the top of my head, Ken Gucci, right?
Yeah,
that's it. That's a new chassis for him. Chris Forsberg, I watched his video tonight. That's a very new chassis for him.
I hope it gets ready. Yeah.
Oh man.
You have LZ in the Mustang, which all eyes are going to be on him, right?
Yeah. So our boy Hurst is in the BMW.
Boy Hurst,
yeah.
Which I don't know if you could get two different chassis than an E46 and the G37.
I mean, so anybody who doesn't, like, full disclaimer, anybody who doesn't know, the company ZZX that I run and Kyle works for, we've sponsored Hurst this year as like, I mean, and it was down to a couple different drivers, and it was just, my decision came down to like the story, because like if he does well, like, and I'm not saying he won't, but like if that boy makes top 8 or top 4 this season, the world's gonna light on fire.
That's right.
But yeah, like going from that G, which is, it's not a great drift chassis, to like the BMW now, which is a very proven drift chassis. I'm
like, you're going from a car that was large. I don't want to say lazy. Like, again, I'm not a professional drifter, so I can't speak to the level that their cars were. But just from what I know about the chassis, the mechanical grip out of the E46, the G37 is not even in the same category. So he got gapped a lot last year from what I saw. Like the aggression was there, the drive was there, like from him. It just seemed like he couldn't compete out of the hole. Yeah. And that's where this chassis.
But when he anticipated it correctly, he was banging doors. Like he was banging doors with Osbo at one point. Like, that's the thing. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like he overcame that. So now that he's in a much more comparable competitive chassis, hopefully testing and everything goes well.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be an up and comer. Like, look at Dylan Hughes once he finally got his chassis sorted out, you know?
Yeah. It took him a full season to really sort it. And then, I mean, now he's easily one of the most competitive
he had
guys.
2 podiums last year, right?
Mm-hmm. Fuck yeah, you're right. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And it kind of like, I don't want to say it came out of nowhere, but nobody was expecting it. And I'm not going to say it's all the car. It obviously isn't, but I just mean that getting in those proven chassis to stay competitive is going to make a huge difference for a lot of these drivers.
And there's a confidence that comes with that, right?
Yep.
Like if you've got an old car that's seen a lot of seasons and has been beat down, like you have to be so especially in Long Beach, you have that confidence going into it. I mean, the downside with the new chassis is you have the hesitation of what's going to break, and you're going to break it in a pinball machine. So
yeah,
that's the crazy part. I think Castro's doing. I think Papadakis is building a new chassis for Castro.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I mean, someone might have to dig into that.
Yes, I haven't really researched that too much. That's what's. There's been so much information going on in the last 2 weeks, or last month, that it's hard to keep up with it, right?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it is tough for sure. I will admit this off season I haven't kept up as much as I was hoping to, but yeah, there's something going on. Let's read the translation. B58 and a GR86. So yeah.
Okay, so he's going to into a GR86. So he's putting the engine from the A90 Supra into the GR86 chassis, the new 86 chassis. Yeah.
Which, what's Gucci building? Is he building it? Because he had a Supra.
Yeah, with a 2J in it, I think.
Couldn't really get that sorted. And I think he's building like a GR86 as well.
It's possible. I know that their issues were just all over the place last year, like boost solenoids, vacuum lines popping off in the middle of the run, just strange stuff, right?
Are they going to switch over to like my other? I should get off my personal one and into the Pistonhead Productions one because it follows like all the drivers, and that's usually how I kept on it. Is I would like check into that Instagram and then go through everything, and be like, okay, cool, I know what everybody's up to. Yeah. Is there anybody else that's got a new chassis this year? Who are the newcomers? Because we've got a couple of new drivers too, right?
Right. So we got Mike Powers.
Right. Another homie.
We got Zhao coming back.
Right?
Yeah.
If that's how you pronounce it, I'll
Zhao. Yeah. You can correct that.
Zhao
post
Baron.
if you want.
No, I'm not going to. There's no editing here. I don't edit shit. Dude, I'm the worst at pronunciations. I'm so bad at it. So he'll come back with the Supra as well. No, he had a Vet.
No, he had a Mustang.
No. He's got a Mustang in Brazil, but he drifted in FD with a Corvette.
Oh, maybe, eh?
Because it was almost stock. Hang on. Now I got to fucking look this up. I did not do enough research before this.
No. Me neither. I kind of wanted to go into it a little bit, what did he say? Wide-eyed and bushy-tailed.
And then there's a British driver? Or is there... No, wait, New Zealand driver? Somebody from overseas?
Here.
Oh my God.
I'll send you the list.
Are you sending me the list? That's probably for the best.
I'm going to send you both lists.
All right.
Welcome to our work day.
No, this is basically what it is. These are the conversations we have. Okay, cool. Good call. I'm just scanning it. Taylor Hall, Hurst, Ole Jaeger. Oh, was Ola in pro? No, he's having an issue though. He shipped his car over and there's like some logistics problems going on right now.
Really?
Yeah. Josh Novak. Joshua Love Novak. He's making the jump up. Nick Novak, Simon Olsen.
Yeah, so Novak's new.
Joshua Reynolds. Fede is back.
Nice.
Which I'm happy about. Brandon Sorensen, Stuke, or Daniel Stuke. Rome, Dan Burkett, Trent Beecham. I hope he does better.
Last year was just a bad showing, right? It didn't look well for him. I don't know if he was fighting the chassis or what, but it just... I
mean, if I'm not mistaken, that is still a solid rear end in that car, which
that could make sense.
That is a huge, like not being able to, like you can dial in some toe in, but like very, very little in comparison. I mean, I feel like that, it's like, that's such a huge like sandbag to have to carry around.
Yeah. It's definitely not ideal, right?
Yeah.
Or else everybody be driving AE86s still.
Yeah. Dean Carney, Darren Kelly. That's what I'm thinking of. Darren Kelly.
Okay.
Okay. So a couple people from overseas, which is, I mean, I want to see more of that. I think you and I talked about it. I'm trying to make a goal of like seeing as much drifting this year as I possibly can. Like as many different series. I was going to make a calendar.
Our calendar's already full of drift events, sir.
I know.
Yeah, so I had only this year, or well, I guess the last winter, started following some of the stuff overseas just from following James Dean. So when I was watching an RDS and I was like, okay, like it looks kind of competitive. And honestly, those tracks are insane. Like,
yeah,
I'm not trying to compare FD to it, but FD, let's say, has like 6 corners, maybe, with 4 zones. These guys are doing like a minute lap, like it's just continual. And I just don't. So that's probably why so many people that come over do so well. Because they're used to not just 1 or 2 corners. They're used to like having to stay on doors for, extended period of time.
I mean, the biggest difference is like in FD, there cannot be a single screw up. Like
that's right.
It has to be perfect in order. I mean, within an extent, but it has to be incredibly good. Like I'm not taking anything away from RDS or British drifting and Irish drifting.
Yeah,
both those
Irish
championships.
Was the other one, yeah.
They both have a lot of corners, but it's like you at least have a bit of time to figure it out. If you biff one corner, like you can make it back. You can make it back. Whereas like in FD, if you try and make it back, it's so obvious.
That's true. Like the even the judging criteria is obviously more lax on proximity and stuff because it's such an elongated track and they are high speed. Not that FD's not high speed, but most of the FD rounds that are high speed are banked, right?
Yeah,
are on ovals or.
I mean, Atlanta's fast, but it's fast for. I mean, I think the initiation, it's got to be the fastest. The initiation in Atlanta has to be the fastest initiation.
I mean,
it used to be Texas.
I'd have to try it to know.
No, Texas wouldn't have been.
It seems like they have to slow down the hill, though, right? Like you're initiating and then slowing down versus initiating and then carrying and speeding up.
That's a good point.
So, yeah, but that's what makes Atlanta so hard. Is judging that because you get gapped at the start and then you're playing catch up and then now you can't slow down enough without running somebody over, right?
Yeah. Or
ending up in the kitty litter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's tough because if you lose it on that initiation and then try and make it up in outer zone, I guess it's outer zone 1 technically. Like if you outrun that and overshoot by a little bit, that's it. It's done. So
there's no room for catch up. So
yeah, I mean there is, but once again, it's obvious, and then you have to stop that catch up early, so that way you don't literally just shoot it off into the media stand.
What's your thoughts about the tracks? So last year seeing Lake Erie was cool. Obviously, we have a little bit of insight on that.
Yeah.
But Utah this year.
Yeah, I don't know enough about that track to have like I've seen a couple of proposed layouts and they're like, oh, if you do this or you do that, but like the one thing everyone's forgetting is like FD has the ability to build stands. Like they won't if they don't have to, but we've seen them do it to put on a better show. So
that's true.
I'm like, I mean, they did that in St. Louis. They added stands in at one point with the old layout. But yeah, I'm curious. It looks interesting. It's nice to have kind of it's not really central, but it's more central than any other track, really. I mean, New Jersey, kind of.
That's kind of what I was getting at, was it kind of gets to a different part of the country, right? Like Lake Erie Speedway was great, but I mean, it's not that far from Jersey, right? Like it's kind of, proximity wise, it's not too far. So it's nice to see it spread out. It's just, I want to see every track, right? So if they could rotate a track in and out every year, I'm down.
I mean, I don't know when we're going to get rid of Orlando, but it's tough.
Prospect's opening there this year, right?
Yeah, which I mean, is good. There's some people that should do really well there, like Kelsey. She should. I mean, it's basically her home track. She should do well there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't. There's so many other tracks that I would prefer to see outside of Orlando.
Yeah,
I mean, outside of that, but yeah.
It's an older track, right? So
it's kind of cool, but like, I mean, that transition is really rough on cars, which is kind of neat. And
yeah,
you can
it's neat for us.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's, I
Not
mean,
for people snapping control arms and
yeah. And tie rods. I
playing
mean,
the jump. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like, this is going to be controversial. Like, I like St. Louis. I know a lot of people, I prefer the old St. Louis layout for sure, but I do like St. Louis. So, I mean, I like cool shit like that. Like,
So I'm not a big fan of St. Louis
I know
at all. Yeah.
it's
I like Irwindale's my jam. Long Beach, great.
Irwindale's
You know?
sick. Long Beach is cool because it's like you have a slowdown right at the end. Everything else is fucking bananas.
Plus, I've tried to play it in Assetto Corsa and I crash every time. You have no idea how many hours I have trying to run Long Beach.
I have some idea, but I know what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I like Texas like towards the wall layout as well, which
Yeah.
is sketchy. Yeah, I mean, Washington's another one that I'm not. Monroe is like, I'm kind of.
Yeah.
It's cool. I mean, as FD calls it, the pass heard around the world happened there. The Vaughn
Yeah.
JT thing. So
And I mean, that's another tough track that seems to separate. Maybe that's a good reason to have it, though. It separates the elder statesmen, if you know what I mean. Like people that don't have their setup exactly dialed in. Like it is not just about skill. It is about
so
your car
fast.
setup to keep yourself up on that wall and not drop down, right?
yeah,
So no, I don't mind that track, but again, it's a similar style of track to Irwindale, right? Like,
see, this is going to be another one. Is like, what? Oh fuck, the name just escaped. Englishtown.
yeah,
I don't like it. There was so many opportunities to build something really cool there, and they put in another figure eight, and I'm like,
yeah.
fuck! It doesn't even have a bank. It doesn't have a like. It doesn't have like at least Orlando. You've got a bank onto a drop. Yeah.
The only, well, not the only, but the main positive is it's supposed to make for absolutely on your door tandems, right?
I know.
It's long
I
sweepers,
know.
but last year it didn't. One, there was the rain, and it just seemed like everybody was plagued with issues. Right?
I love the fact that we have stands on either side. I like that we've taken I mean, I don't know enough, but let's say quote unquote failing drag strip and repurposed it for something incredible. But I feel like if they just, I don't know, even if they pave the whole, like as much as they fucking could have, just fill it in with pavement and give me a skid pad that could have been cooler. Like the figure eight bugs me.
Yeah,
It bugs me.
I'm with you. I liked the layout that they ran back in the day in Saint Eustache or Montreal in Canada.
Yeah.
Because it was like it's different. There was nowhere else like it, and that wall just eats people.
That's the thing. Like,
You need it's
danger.
not good for the cars, but you need the danger. Exactly.
You have to. I mean, yeah. In the same way that like, I want hockey players to fight, and I want, like in the same idea that like there needs to be that risk it for the biscuit. That's why Long Beach is so fucking cool. Because if you take that same layout and put it anywhere else without the walls, it sucks.
That's right. If that's cones, it is nothing. It is not dynamic at all. It completely separates who is on their fucking game for the whole weekend, because you can't just be on your game for practice or whatever. You have to be all weekend.
Every moment.
One fuck up, you're done.
Yeah.
Like Turk almost ruined his entire season. The fact that he brought back a practice car to complete the season is pretty insane. But
I got to talk to him.
8.6.
I got to talk to him in Orlando after that, and like he was like it fucked him up.
He was shook. Yeah, like I was following him a lot on social media at the time, and I think physically, like it did a lot. It seemed like he had to go through rehab and stuff, which that tells you it's a decent hit.
I think mentally it was the best thing that ever happened to him, because like
I also agree.
It's like
he came back strong after that too, right?
You have to. I mean, we like. In a lot of sports, like, I mean, I've heard this with like snowboarding and stuff too, where it's like, you need to have one really bad wreck, like that's like broken bones, like to get the fear up. You're like, that's the worst it's ever going to be. I'm like, cool. Like, I know how bad it can be and I got through it. So let's go.
And you kind of need to cross the line to know where the line is. Yeah. Right. Because these guys, you're riding the line the whole time and you have to keep pushing, and then eventually you're going to go over. But hey, at least you know, like, fuck, I'm not messing around in outer zone 1, right? Like,
yeah. And then for him, for his example, like he got into a new chassis that wasn't as beat up, that wasn't as tired, like things weren't out of alignment anymore. Cause like you have a couple of wrecks and like you adjust your alignment at the wheels, but like your subframe could be pushed out by 1/8 of an inch and you'll never get that back. So you're making up with it with alignment specs, which is not the right way to do it. I mean, it's the only way to do it in a lot of cases. Yeah.
You're limiting your adjustment. Bringing it back to Jonathan Hurst, I think that's going to be a huge thing for him this year. Is there's no hiding that G37 had some battle scars, right? Like there's no way that chassis is even remotely straight underneath. So starting off with something that you have full adjustment and is straight to begin with is perfect. Like you said, with Turk getting into a brand new chassis, and it didn't hurt, getting into a championship contending Corolla.
I mean, the next season, right?
Behind you, right? That's what I'm saying. In the next season, like, just through his progression, it didn't hurt to have that. But I don't know. There's just a lot to look forward to in this next year, both in pro and pro spec.
Yeah. Pro spec's interesting. I know we barely covered everything. I am upset with how few people I know on this list, but I'm also incredibly excited because, like, to try and keep up with pro-am, you can't even keep up with pro-am drifting. Because does it even exist?
It does, right? Like, I guess, Lone Star is still a pro-am sanctioned event, right? Like Lone Star Drift, they're still considered pro-am series. But I don't want to call it the problem, but depending on who you are, you'll see it as a problem. I'm sure Sage isn't happy about it. It's the shootout series. It's it's clutch kickers. Like, look at the list of clutch kickers. One half of them are people on the roster at FD, and the rest is people that could be on FD and choose not to,
or have been. I mean, Alec Onadale is a great example of that, right?
Yeah, Nate Hamilton, Alec Onadale, and they're cleaning up over there. Why? Because
there's money.
It's half of the travel, and there's a better purse.
Yeah, and the track is not obscene on a car.
Well, let's see what happens this year.
Yeah.
Because it's same track with 5 different layouts at the Freedom Factory. So,
which, I mean, how fucking fantastic of a collab is that?
That's like super cool. So because I follow Cletus, as you already know, selfishly, I was kind of hoping that Orlando would die off and that FD would eventually go to there, just for the sense that that the track, they'll put money into the track to make it work.
Yeah.
That they're willing to come up with a layout that's exciting and fun, and because that's what Orlando's just kind of, we've seen it for so many years, and it just feels like the same thing over and over and over again, right?
Yeah.
I agree. It's that figure 8. So
I agree. I think that would be incredible. Also, like, just the cross-pollination of fans is the biggest thing. Like, do you watch Faster with Finnegan?
No.
Okay.
I don't watch it much.
Okay. They did one where he had to drift a car and Fede was his instructor.
Oh, cool.
So it was like that's the kind of shit that drifting needs, because like the amount of old dudes I talk to who are like, oh, I've heard of it, but like I don't really understand it. And it's like, okay, well, like, let me tell you. And then I show them one of like 3 video clips that are super exciting. And I'd be like, this is what it looks like.
But I'll use the Cletus McFarlane crew as an example in this. So I've been following them for years. They hated drifting. They hated drifters, the same crap that everybody would say and you know, call it figure skating and whatever. And then what happened? One of them tried a drift car and now they all have drift cars. They're holding drift events there. It is the most exciting and accessible motorsport, right?
Yeah.
So being able for FD to be able to hopefully collaborate with people in the future to kind of help get it out to more people who are still stuck in just being closed-minded. They don't want to see it. They don't want to try it. You know, getting eyes in front of it's going to open it up even more. And hopefully that means more venues, and the more money in FD, the better it is for us. That means that the competition will go up. Sponsors are putting money behind it, right?
Yeah. And the more money in FD, the better. Because like you said, the production value goes up. We see better coverage, better live streaming over the years. Like the more money they can invest back into the product, the better it is as a consumer.
Hopefully more practice time for the drivers, as they were vocal about last year.
Well, and it's such a catch-22 as well, because it's like, going back to the tire situation, it's like some of the guys just can't afford more practice tires. Like I would love to see FD. I don't want to see a spec tire, because I think that would fuck a lot of stuff up. But I'd like to see FD be able to step in and subsidize tires for drivers they don't have to pay.
Do they have a tire allotment? I never knew, like F1, where it's like for the weekend you only get 12 sets.
I believe you can only go through 10 sets in practice and pro, but like most guys weren't even going through that.
Yeah.
Like the odd guy, like, you know, like let's take like a Chelsea Denofa having a problem or tuning something would go through 10 sets in practice.
That's where you know what I mean? That's where strategy would come in. Like in F1, if they need to put laps out, they're burning hard tires because they don't want to, you know, mess up their softs for the weekend. So it would be a similar situation. It could be a similar situation where they would have different compounds, and like if Chelsea's or whoever is out testing, you know, and they only have 6 sets for practice of comp tires, and then I don't want to say scrubs, but you know, lower tread wear tires. Mm-hmm. It might even it out and give everybody else a fighting chance, because when somebody who has the money to get sessions of 10, you know, comp tires out there, versus somebody who's lower on the spectrum, who's like, look, I only have enough like kill tires for the competition, you know, and they're using scrubs here and there. It's I don't want to say it's not fair, but that means it's money winning the rate, or money winning the sport, and not the true spirit of competition.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and that I think a lot of people would be surprised how many guys in, let's say, the bottom 16 will run scrubs, because you don't have a choice.
Tires aren't cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. You know? And they're only going up. Like, I can't remember what the pricing is.
Even worse than them not being cheap is that you can't even get them. Like we know from talking to contacts last year that, you know, they were having tires sitting off in containers and they couldn't get them into port. Like that's just horrid.
It's and I mean, from a brand perspective now, like it's not going to get any better. I guess the only saving grace is that the price of fuel has gone so fucking high that people aren't going to be driving and going through tires as much.
Right.
And that's something that has to play into this as well, is like, if you're driving a rig across the continental United States, that's expensive.
I don't know how some of the smaller teams are going to do it. And then how are you going to have your full team there? You know what I mean? If you can't bring an RV or whatever, because it cost you your, you know, double what it did last year.
And I mean, the cost of flights are only going up too. Like there was a thing, I think today, that I read where it's like, if you think gas prices are bad, wait till you see what jet fuel is going to cost soon. Because like there's a mass reserve of that right now, but same thing, they'll future it. They'll bet that it's going to go up and increase prices ahead of time. I mean,
and very rarely do those prices come down the way they're supposed to, right? Like,
yeah, we might see a correction back to like 150, but like, I don't know. In Canada, I mean, obviously, for all of the U.S. listeners, 150 or $1.50 a liter. So like
whatever that works out to per gallon,
like $5 a gallon or some shit.
I was gonna say.
My wife's over in Holland right now, and I mean, you know Jess, obviously, but for anybody listening, it's $2 or 2.18 euros per liter right now.
Oh wow!
So it's like $3.60 a liter. So it's like $9 a gallon.
Unreal.
Not that they have to drive far; they drive very often. But like, if you have to, like, holy shit! And the cars are significantly smaller. Like, no one owns a pickup truck in the Netherlands. And if you do, it's tiny.
They get taxed for it too, I think, like heavily, right?
Yeah.
Congestion tax and all that.
I know New Zealand's got something like that as well. They've got a road tax where like you basically prepay for your miles. And then when you go to like renew your sticker, your license plate or whatever, if it's more on your odometer, then you have to pay extra and you have to pre-buy for the next year. It's nuts.
I mean, that just gets into a whole like wormhole of trying to prepare that like the anxiety must be through the roof.
Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, if you try and do a pro season on less than $50,000, I mean, it is going to be incredibly tough. And that's if everything goes well and you're not replacing half your chassis or you pop a $10,000 engine.
And I think a lot of people have a misconception about sponsorship too. Like we saw down in PRI show, it's not like you're just sponsors are coming and like, hey, you want to run this year? Like it's a grind for these guys to get sponsorship. And that's a job in itself to getting and maintaining sponsors. And then on top of that, working on the car. Right. And it's just, that's why when I see this long list of drivers, I still wonder, are all of them going to make all of the rounds? You know? Yeah.
I mean, looking at all the pro spec guys, like not to sound shitty, the amount of guys in pro spec that drop off is nuts. Like, and it's tough because if you think it's tight for the pro guys, try being a pro spec driver.
I agree. Right.
Like you still have 4 rounds to go to. You still have to pay for crew. You still have to pay for food and hotels. And like some guys get RVs and some, I mean, I've seen guys fucking camp out in the back of their trailers. Like you got to do what you got to do. But you still have to get there and you still have to buy tires and you still have to feed people. So.
The interesting thing about pro spec though, there's a couple names missing off that list.
Yeah, I mean, Josiah, first of all, I mean, our buddy Josiah, I have no idea I haven't reached out. I haven't asked. I'd like to say it's not my business, but I'm a nosy fuck anyway. So I'll try and find out.
Yeah. Tomorrow.
I should message him. Josiah, I think he listened. I mean, he's been on. It's one of the longest podcasts I've ever done was with him. Listen. Buddy, hit me up. Let me know. You want to talk about it? Podcast is going again. So you got my number.
Maybe he's waiting for that Corvette to be finished. Who knows?
Oh, that's a good point. Is there anybody else missing? Was that it?
I just that was my segue into into that.
You're the king of segues. Your ability to transition my talking points is nuts. You catch me right before I go on a rant too. It's good.
I tried to. That's from keeping the team's meetings together during the day.
The daily meetings, trying to keep me on task is a full-time job in itself.
Does anybody stand out to you? Like TLO obviously is he's running DMCC again this year. So
Schlegel. I don't think any Drift HQ driver. Right? I don't think there's any Drift HQ driver. You know more about that than I do.
Not a ton, but from what I see in the people that I follow, they pulled out of FD,
which is it's not insane because they're party drifters.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it just wasn't viable, and they're more on because you have to remember they sponsor Drift Week. They're heavily involved in clutch kickers. Yeah. So if you're them as a business, you have to go, okay, what are we getting out of FD? Because at the end of the day, it's a business for everybody, and maybe the dollars just didn't line up the same.
Or, I mean, they did an incredible job. They paid for a really good sponsorship for 2 years, made a shitload of money off it, and went, okay, cool. Now we're going to spread it to the lower tier guys because we got our public face up. Like we got our brand awareness
everybody
really
knows
high.
Who they are now.
Right. Yeah. And now it's like, cool. Yeah. We can take the same money we put into FD for those 2 years, split it on either coast. Right. And still make that money. So.
And the people that work there, most of them are drifters anyways, and these are series that they can actually compete in a little bit more competitively, right? Like,
yeah,
and
cheaper.
Duarte cheaper, right? Like I think Duarte is probably competing in clutch kickers this year, which, I know FD's not a big fan of clutch kickers, but I love it. I love watching it. Seeing pro guys drive non-pro cars, is fun.
Or their pro cars, like,
well, I
Alec,
prefer the not, but yeah.
I mean, Taylor Hall did.
He did, but I'm a bit of a Taylor Ray fanboy, so watching him take him out with the Miata, pretty happy about it. It's tough if you're Taylor Hall, right?
Yeah,
like you got a 1,000 horsepower Cadillac being taken out by a Miata, but
that car is not made for that. That car is not made for that, though.
No,
that Cadillac is.
That Cadillac was big, and that track, it's all seat time, which is why I think so many people are loving these shootout events or whatever you want to call them, because in FD, you can only put in so many laps in those cars. Like, it's just too expensive to run them. Yeah. Versus, I'll use Taylor Ray as an example. Before an event, he can go to a drift weekend there and put in 50 laps, on scrub tires and just nail every corner. And then when it comes to comp time, dial it up, and everybody else, he I don't want to say he doesn't need to practice, but he just had 50 laps the weekend before. So another 10 laps on comp tires and you're good to go.
Yeah. Speaking of Taylor Hall, that is a driver with a new car.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's getting rid of the Caddy and going to a Vet. So.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I'm curious. I'm very curious to see how his year goes. Yeah. I am one of the people who is willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that you have one or two bad incidents and then you're under the microscope and then everything that you do is wrong after that.
Gets magnified. Yeah. I agree with that, because there are other drivers that I feel, get blamed for a lot of stuff because of that. But
yeah,
it's interesting how many people are going to the Corvettes now, and if FD is going to be modifying their rules for the rear subframes, because a lot of them are trying to go to front trans with the rear quick change. Yeah. And it's very difficult to do with the factory subframe. So I know Josiah at FDF is making a kit for it, but it looks like it severely compromises the integrity, and in FD you can't brace it, right? You can only do so much with the subframe. There's certain areas you can't put connectors and
there may be a chassis not limitation. What's the word I'm looking for? Exception. Because they've had exceptions for cars in the past. I don't remember them. I know there was one for the S chassis. I think there was one for the BMW
46.
There is for bracing the subframe.
Yeah, because you can't make people run that factory subframe. That's
it's
not competitive.
Yeah. So there might be. I mean, I remember. I think it was Dirk. No, it might have been. Somebody has. Like the rear 6-speed with the quick change built into it. And I can't remember who. Right? It might be Matt Field. I mean,
because I thought that because he had to do a clutch change during practice or something, they had to drop the subframe, I think.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of everyone moving it up front is if you fry the clutch, right? Like, having to drop the torque tube and the whole subframe just to change a clutch, it's not feasible for the most part, like during a round, right?
Well, it's also the rear ends of those cars get damaged a lot. So having that big and that expensive, not only is it expensive because it's a transmission, it's expensive because it's an incredibly rare and expensive transmission.
Yeah. Or it's a specifically built, even if it's, a G-Force build box or whatever, it's still the Corvette version, right?
It's one fucking car.
Yeah. Versus, being able to just buy a GSR and 4-speed and call it a day.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I'm excited about all the Corvettes though, because obviously the chassis works. Matt Field, love him or hate him, he proved that the chassis is very competitive. I mean, it's becoming even more popular on the Pro-Am side. Like you see it coming up in a lot of other series. So
all those all those old guys have moved on. I mean, that's the prices. They're still expensive, but the prices come down.
They're attainable, right? So,
yeah. But it is nice to see. I mean, it is the biggest drift chassis. I mean, the next big drift chassis, or whatever you want to say, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Until something else gets cheaper, because like even a Supra, the amount of work that you have to do to like an A90, it's a lot and it's expensive. And again, but does that matter for the people building $100,000 cars? Obviously not.
No.
But for anybody else, I don't want to say lower tier, but I mean in the available funds bracket, buying a Corvette that you can get for 15 or 20 grand that already has an LS in it, it's already lightweight. The chassis itself was built to handle horsepower. So you're not having to brace all the same stuff.
Yeah.
And luckily the Z06, the expensive one, you can't really use it anyways because it's aluminum. So you have to build a whole substructure for the cage. So the regular Corvettes are cheaper, which is what everybody's going to grab for drift chassis. So it's interesting though. Like I just still out of my budget, obviously. Hence why I have a beat up E46. But
I mean, the Supra chassis. So now that they're coming out with the manual transmission, is fantastic. But from my understanding, it's only behind the inline 6. It's not behind the inline 4, because stick with me here. If it would have been behind, just wait though. There's a solid reason behind this. The best drifting chassis are ones that are relatively inexpensive and already have a manual transmission in it, right?
Yeah.
Originally, when the inline 4 came out, it was kind of hinted by somebody at Toyota, if you're going to engine swap a car, this is the one to do it. The downside was it's behind an automatic transmission. So it's not like you can just do that. Now you're installing a clutch pedal. Now you're definitely changing out more electronics. Like that was the issue. So I think we might see a manual transmission in the inline 4 next year. And I believe I'm correct with this. If there is the inline 4 with the manual transmission, then forget everything I've just said. But sorry about that part of your life.
But I was like, why is he excited about a 4-cylinder? But no, what you're saying makes sense.
Right? Because because like what year Corvette are people buying right now, right? Like that's the amount of, because the price point, those Vettes were more MSRP when they were new, but the Supra is not far behind it. So you could take the same timeline and then figure that out. If Matt Field was in that car a couple of years ago and it was let's say it was the year 2000, and what year Vette would that have been? 2000? I don't know my years of Vettes.
Well, I guess the C5 started in what I want to say 98-ish. Yeah. So you probably want to be in a C6.
Yeah. Which let's say 2006. So like either way, the car is 15 years old. So if we use that as a marker, it's going to be 10 years to 15 years before we see a Supra get down to the level where, I mean, our buddy Sharky, I don't know if you know my buddy Sharky.
No,
yeah. Oh, okay. I mean, he's got a Vette as well. I mean, he's got some money, obviously, but like he's not rolling in it. So that's what I mean. Like 10 years seems to be that marker where you take a good sports car and then it comes down. I mean, the AE80 or not the GT86, not the GR86. That's gonna fuck me up now. I just realized that.
Right. I know.
Those were relatively less expensive because you could pick them up for into the 30,000s, right?
Yeah.
So you had people who bought them that kind of knew how to drive and crashed a shitload of them, and that's why we saw those into drifting a lot quicker, in my opinion. Right? It was a more obtainable car.
They were the more entry level car, right? Like I'll put it on par with the Miata, and people are going to get mad about that, but I mean in the sense of cost for fun. But typically what happens is people buy a car like that, they track it, they drive it, then realize, okay, I want a Porsche now or whatever. So those cars went on the used market, and unlike Miatas, you could throw power at them, right? Like, and again, there is obviously the Miata out there that works, as we know, but
I don't know,
able to fit a JZ in it properly and brace the chassis and
I mean, realistically, it's like it's between the Vet and the E92 now, in my mind. But even still, like the E92's got I don't know what it is with BMWs and depreciation, but it is incredible. Like the only one that holds any value is the M3. Everything else just plummets.
And I used to have a car dealership, then we dealt with most of that stuff, and I can tell you exactly why. It's snobbery. It's because it's snobbery. That's all it is.
Because if you're going to buy a BMW, you're buying a new one. So the used market is super cheap.
It's not even that. There's like, if you're buying a 3 Series, you're buying a BMW. If you're buying an M3, you're buying an M3. It's like it's a different car, like how a Corvette's not a Chevrolet.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? Like it's kind of, it takes on its own identity at that point.
That was well put. But yeah, I agree.
It's not the first time I've said that sentence.
No, it's just I never thought of it that way. That like, you don't think of it as a Chevy Corvette. It's just a Corvette. Whereas an M3 is not a BMW M3. It's just an M3. So,
and because
it's a
same
separate
chassis, it's the car, the type of people that, I don't want to say type of people, but the experience you're going for is not the same.
Yeah, you can
it
say
is a
type
type
of people,
but like I said, I specifically sold high-end cars at one point, so
yeah,
I've seen all kinds. But
there's really no other chassis that are coming out, at least right now, that are in that realm.
I mean, who knows what's going to happen with the Camaro? That might start picking up a bit of steam.
As they
they're
come down in
becoming
price.
cheap now. Yeah, and that's going to be cheaper than a Corvette. You can get it with an LS, or you can get a V6 one that's ready to put an LS in, right? So
yeah, I mean the Mustangs as well. Like they're definitely coming down. Like you can get but I mean it's almost in that same realm as the Corvette, but just the Corvette that chassis developed faster. Like I feel like there was more support behind that chassis as opposed to the Mustangs.
Which is funny because, like, I mean, I'm sure you've probably driven a Mustang or a Corvette, but driving both Corvettes, like they seemed more limited. Like the chassis seemed like it had less to give you. Not in the sense that it wasn't faster. It's just that like it seemed like it was tapped out. Like that's all it had. Maybe more horsepower, but the chassis was just like done. And that was the feedback you got at the beginning of people using them for drifting and tracking and stuff, just due to the suspension design, the rear transmission.
Yeah.
But I mean, if nothing else, drifters or the drift community is creative. And I think finding cheap, creative solutions and realizing that the stuff that the Corvette has is harder to put into other cars, and the stuff that it doesn't have is easier to put in, right? So
it's what I think is interesting about the two is that and I mean, obviously there's other guys, but like you had two people who developed the Corvette. You've Daigo Saito and Matt Field, in my mind. Two different sides. Obviously, Daigo, that's not going to transfer over because what he's doing over there to make it over to the US, like maybe there is, and I'm not aware of it because I don't know the performance market for either of those very well. But in my mind, Matt Field basically set up that industry. But at the same time, you had guys like JTP and Vaughn and then Chelsea really pushing the Mustang market.
Yeah.
But I feel like it didn't. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too blindsided to this. Like, is there more vets out now, or is there more Mustangs? And out of the two, which one's more competitive?
So I think that it's only the newer style chassis of Mustang that is more competitive.
So
the
older
S550, right? Like,
yeah. So the older vets of this. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's fair.
The Corvettes of the same vintage. Again, I could be way off base here, but just based off my limited knowledge, the Corvettes of the same vintage had more race car parts. It was more competitive and more development, right? Because at the end of the day, there was more race car development behind a Corvette than a Mustang.
That's a good point.
Unless you're getting a GT 500, and at that point, who's going to take that car and ruin it for drifting, right?
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, it also comes down to the LS versus the 5-liter. Like that's the other part of it too, right? Like
maybe that 4.6 couldn't take it, and that was their main engine. It was before was the 4.6 and the 5.4.
Yeah.
maybe when they changed engine development into the Coyote 5-liter, that was a huge step. Again, but I haven't driven a ton of Mustangs, so I don't really know that much about it, but that's what seemed to happen since they went to newer chassis, newer engine that I'm assuming is more reliable, right? Like, I don't think it could have been less reliable. So, I mean, I think that just kind of is what works. And even if you look at the people that campaigned those cars, they were good. Like, those drivers are just good drivers. They were good in those cars, and they're great in the new chassis, right? Like,
that's a good point. And like you had this solid rear end as well. I mean, let's not forget about that, right? That's right. Going back to what we said about Beecham earlier, like, fuck, that's tough.
But it's kind of funny, right? So Ford kind of stuck with that solid rear axle as long as they could, just like Chevy stuck with push rods, and Chevy won.
Yeah.
Right. They won. They're still pumping out push rod engines that everybody loves. So
we're still making push rods, and they're not making solid rear ends anymore.
Exactly. Right. So.
Oh, that's too funny. That's too funny. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious to see what happens. Okay. So here's a question. Here, I need your thoughts on this because we're both super biased on both of these subjects, which is interesting.
Perfect.
When do we see the first competitive electric drift car?
Oh, when do I want to, or when is realistic?
Let's go with both. Whatever one's shorter, start with.
All right. I'd like to see one sooner, within 5 years.
Okay.
It depends on what happens with the fuel stuff. And that's just based on the fact that I like electric cars. I mean, I'm for it. As much as I love the V8 Grumble, I've been in a crap ton of fast cars. Nothing has ever been the experience like driving, insane mode Tesla, right? There's nothing. Yeah. Again, limited. That's not top speed. That's takeoff. Do I think it's going to be viable anytime soon? Probably not. Because, like, I don't know if you watched the Vaughn's behind the scenes of his trip to the Faroe Islands. There's a lot that goes into the electric cars that it's not that it's scarier than combustion, it's that it's newer to us, right? So we don't necessarily have the safety protocols, the infrastructure, the knowledge to know what can we do in a crash to stop the vehicle from being completely electrified, right? Because with how much contact is in drifting, you'd hate for it to be that someone does a small touch, a battery gets knocked loose somehow, and now the chassis itself is, a walking cattle prod or a driving cattle prod. So I really think it's going to, the shitty thing is the way that stuff advances is through crashes and bad things happening, right? So they didn't put seatbelts in the cars because they wanted to. So, right. So I really think I want it to be within 5 years. I think it'll be within 10 years. I really think it's going to line up with battery technology. Like we know from other research we've been a part of, that batteries are right about to turn a corner, or at least that's the hope.
What it seems like.
Yeah. And once battery technology can turn that corner to be less volatile, easier to get the components for it, and because the charging, you can't even argue that anymore, right? Like, if you can fast charge a car in an hour to go from, as long as it's not completely dead, you can get most of these cars, even the hyper cars, are like 10% to 80% within an hour.
Yeah.
There's no way they're using that much battery if they were drifting for 4 laps. So,
I don't think the battery will be the thing. I think I agree that, I mean, as more of these cars wreck, as terrible as it sounds, like it's general street electric cars, as more of them wreck and the chassis become available, I mean, I could see, I think if I had to guess, the first one's going to end up being a Tesla, because
or Tesla powered.
Yeah, at least Tesla powered. But like, I think there are enough smart people, and I know there's already one in Ontario. I mean, Sasha from On Point Dyno is already hacking Teslas like crazy, and if he's doing it, then there's
Ottawa too that does it.
Yeah, so it's like what you're going to struggle with then is just the traction control to make sure that that's no longer working. you could, in theory, even set up the throttle to be like the moment you let off your foot altogether, that's your e-brake, which would be super interesting, right? Because you could tell it that. You could tell it's a reverse charge if you let off.
So that brings up a counterpoint then of motorsports fairness. I mean, how could you control? So if people could have electric cars that have to be run by the computer and can do all that stuff, how do you make them not have traction control?
I mean,
right? Which is banned. Like they're going to have it. So at that point,
let's be serious though.
Everybody has it, right?
People are utilizing shit like that. Like it's banned. There's a ton of shit that's banned in racing and FD in particular. But
yep.
There are driver aids that are currently running in FD, and I think there'd be more people running them than most people would want to believe. But that's
yeah.
But that's
the reality.
Racing,
right?
but that's just racing. Like every rule has a story, right?
I will say though that to me it's encouraging to see companies get behind it. Like we know AEM works with like Tesla swaps. So I think stuff like that, like the aftermarket industry getting involved as we see them kind of go in that direction instead of fighting it, I think we'll see a lot. That's when you're going to start to see, a couple grassroots cars come out. And I know there have been here and there some electric drift cars because someone's going to light you up for us saying there hasn't. But
I know there has been. I've seen videos, but like I'm talking like pro spec or pro.
Yeah, like competitive. So I think until you get these companies backing a car that they feel is competitive, we won't really see it for another couple of years because I don't think they have it figured out yet. But and I'll be the first person to say I would love to have an old car, an old classic with an electric engine or electric motor. So why wouldn't I want to have a race car with it, right? It's just one less thing to break when you're, inches from somebody's door.
Mm-hmm. I'm very excited for the day that like the first, like instead of a fuel cell, it's a battery cell. Yeah. Super safe, right? High output, performance driven, is meant for, it's got regulators built into it in the same way you'd have a fuel pump. It has all these different, distribution models in it to make sure that you're getting the correct power to the motors, the correct time. And then, it becomes like a swap. You buy that, you then buy a Tesla rear end, you get some giant, 2-inch cables that run to the motors. You hook up a fucking Bluetooth pedal and there it is. Like that's where it'll be.
It will be. And the thing that's exciting about that is it's like a whole new frontier again. It's them having to develop chassis again. It's having to develop suspension again, which some people see as a negative. I see that as a huge positive. As a fan, now you're going, all right, competition again. You're seeing someone from the bottom work their way up instead of just knowing that you can get into XYZ chassis, throw whatever engine in it, these parts, and now you're competitive. It's having to learn it all over again.
Yeah.
And learn how to drive it.
Well, and then you also, now we're opening up, the ability for more companies to provide parts, and we force companies to start innovating within that technology. So, I don't think gasoline engines will go anywhere because we still have coal trains. Like they're not ever going to disappear fully. But at some point, technology is going to continue to evolve. At some point we took lead out of gasoline.
But even at some point, if the gas price goes up high enough, it'll be cheaper to develop the electric stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing that will change it is once it becomes cheaper, people will do it.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, right now, I think the software is such a huge thing. The battery packs are such a huge thing. And there's really not that many Tesla crashes. Obviously they get publicized when they happen.
That's like what you're talking about with being under the microscope, right?
Yeah. There's really not that many.
It's not the same amount, yeah.
No. And the funny thing is, it's like, I want a Tesla with front end damage now, not rear end.
Right.
Oh man. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I want to see it. I mean, it was sick. It was sick. I mean, I got to film the Napoleon Camaro in person. I got to be there when it did its first lap, which was so cool, and it's so weird. But
it's so funny. Like we were talking about getting new eyes in front of drifting, and I think electric mobility is kind of the same, where everybody's stuck in a hate mode because you know what you like what you know, and you know what you like. There's nothing can replace a V8 Rumble. Sorry. Yeah. It just is what it is. It's in our DNA, but it's not in our kids' DNA, right? So for them, performance will likely win over that, soulful connection or whatever you want to call it. So getting people exposed to it, like yourself, you weren't a big electric guy until through work you got exposed to it, right?
Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, I don't like it. I don't want to like it. Oh geez, I hate that I like it. And that's what happens. And then you get in something and you're like, this is unmatched. Why aren't we doing this? And then you see the price tag and you realize it. But
as it comes down, I mean, I was pricing at a Tesla a couple weeks ago. Because you and I were doing the math. I'm like, man, if I get to drive this, like at what point is a Tesla cheaper?
I got hookups on used Teslas. Let me know.
Oh, don't say that. Fuck.
No, I legitimately do.
I know you do. That's the thing. Like it's not. I know. Maybe. Anyways. But yeah.
All right. Well, back to FD stuff, I guess, before closing out. Is there anybody on there that you see like as a standout for this year that you're like, I think he's got it?
I think Odie is like, I mean, you cannot count that dude out. And like, he is so ripe to win it. He's so like, he came so close for 2 years straight. I want to see Dan.
Do you find him distracted?
What, with work shit?
With like feel and stuff now. Like, do you see
or less distracted?
Similar to Vaughn, where RTR took over. I don't want to say took over, but like where his effort goes there. Do you see that happening with Odie before he wins? I think
comparing feel suspension to RTR is
I know
it's not quite right.
No,
but I think
I mean in the grand scheme of things.
I'd be curious to know what like his like feel's gotten big quickly, and it's from what I hear is incredible suspension with like outstanding customer support. So obviously he's running the business well, but like I don't know if he's at that point in his business where he is more distracted or less distracted. Like for me,
that's kind of what I was getting at is he at the push point where you're going to see a decline? And when I was talking about Vaughn, I'm not talking about RTR this year or last year. I'm talking about him, like them building it with Ford and building all the projects on the side that they take your practice days. They take your chassis development days, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I want him to do well. I really want him to do well.
And you just brought up Brad Dan, so I want to hear
that. Was my next one.
Yeah.
I don't know if they need to get him. This is going to sound terrible.
Don't say like driving lessons.
No. I feel like just watching his runs and seeing his screw ups, they look so just as a mental break, a break in concentration. Yeah. I don't hear of issues with his cars. So I think his mechanical ability is incredible. Best sounding car in FD. I 100% agree. It's competitive because you can build that chassis to be incredibly fast. I just don't know. I feel like he needs like meditation or like a mental coach or something.
He has the shining moments, right?
Oh my God.
He's kind of like he's like an out of the pits person. He works on the car. So like, I want him to do so well. Being a Jay-Z fan, like a Toyota fan, like someone running like a Mark IV Supra, like you just want it, right? Like you want him to get to have it. And then he does so well in practice and in the first couple of rounds or in the first couple of battles, and then the mental breakdowns, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I think, that's tough. Outside of that, I'm curious, like I'm kind of just going through the list. And I mean, I'd love to talk about every single driver, but my podcast's already long enough. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see Denofa. I want to see Mike Essa come back and just do better. Forsberg might be a write-off for this year. Matt Field is due for a better, like, I'm not saying he has had bad seasons, but he is due for like a top 3 final season.
So it's funny, like last year, his big push and like his big drive was that he was on top of his mental game and he did so well. Mm-hmm. And then you saw it come kind of unraveled, and then you saw him lose the battles where you're like, man, it looked like it was just one small mistake away from winning the whole event. Yeah. And I mean, he was a contender right up till the end, right?
Yeah.
I hope Forsberg gets the car ready, but I mean, that's a tall order now because he's another one of my favorites, good, smooth driver. And I just want to see him win another solid one. Cause when he's on one, he's on it. Right.
Yeah. Like, I'd love to see him win another championship and then retire. Like, that's not to sound shitty, but like, top, but as one of the last remaining OGs, like, I want to see him win one more the same way Vaughn did, and then call it and pass the torch.
Do you think Masuyama's going to have a better year?
Yeah, the car looks good. I mean, I saw a livery come out for it. I think a lot of the overseas drivers, it comes down to their living arrangements. Like if they are living and driving in the States for the entire year, they seem to do significantly better than the travel, because the travel is going to fucking kill you.
Yeah.
Like it's already tough, but then add in like a 10-hour flight 2 days before.
Because skill, he's got it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Skill, style, he's got it. You know, provided the car can stay together, which it seemed all right last year, had a couple hiccups, but.
Yeah. I mean, look at Taguchi. Great example. Like when he stayed in North America, he drove significantly better. So I think that'll be huge to that.
I think Turk, if he has a good start to the season, he'll be good. But if he misses the start, I see it, falling behind.
Yeah, he's got to get that momentum early for sure. Obviously,
Hurst is going to be there. Yeah, and Hurst, Osbo. We want to see that.
We want to see.
I have faith in Hurst.
Fully biased. So I'm so pumped to see what this season brings for him. So,
even if it's just solid competitive driving, like
that's all I want to see.
That's it, right? And a chassis that they can, because you can't expect him to build a new chassis and come out and swing rocket to the top right away. Would be nice, but it's unrealistic, I guess. But I really think that it was such a good move to go to that chassis. His driving style suits that chassis, like, the hard flicks, the just driving it hard, using all the grip that it has. So I'm excited for it. Yeah.
On a small side note, if there are any drivers listening that are looking for help with your social media, let me know.
You segued yourself.
I did. I had to. I mean, I had to get a plug in there. I don't do sponsors, so this is sponsored by ZZX Digital.
Yeah. It's funny. I had my camera set up before so you could see the ZZX Digital sticker on my computer.
I don't brand it enough. But yeah, if anybody is interested, get in touch. We do automotive and driver marketing, so I'd love to work with more drivers.
That'd be sick.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of people that have good programs going into this year. There's a lot of question marks though. Like
Ryan Literal.
I was letting you say it.
No, it's a huge question mark.
It's a huge question mark because it was part of the thing that I didn't like about the last 2 seasons was you'd watch 2 minutes of qualifying and you're like, I'm over it. Half the guys aren't trying to qualify because there's no points involved. And you don't need to. You're like, okay, you have to do not a 0 to make it in the show.
Yeah.
But
what's the motivation?
Do the judges really want 30 cars instead of 32? No. So, I mean, the zeros were kind of liberal, like to not be given away. So it's.
I like that it's faster with this format. I'm a big fan of that, but I would say bring points back.
Yes.
And I mean, just bring points back.
If you bring points back, you have everybody, especially those top contenders, throwing it out because they know that at the end of the year, those qualifying points are going to matter.
I mean, we've seen it for several seasons where it comes down to a handful of points that qualifying can win a championship. So,
Dean Carney's another question mark. Hopefully, his car is a little bit more on point, which is unusual.
It's just not built. It's just not built for this. It's at the end of the day.
Sounds cool. Looks sick.
At the end of the day, it's just not made for this.
And
That's it.
That was something I wanted to bring up earlier, and I totally forgot. Do you think we're going to start to, or at some point, see Mopar vehicles more in drifting? Other than that,
I've heard talks
talked about it before, but
I've heard talks about Camaros and stuff coming out. A lot of people complain just the weight is just immense in them. They're just like, no matter what you do, they're just a heavy chassis, and the power is not quite there. And like, how much development? Like, unless the price of the Hellcat engines comes down to like a reasonable level.
But then can a Hellcat engine sit on rev limiter for 45 seconds?
I have no idea. That's the other question. Like
we saw at a couple of grassroots events that unfortunately the only cars with Hemis that were there were broken very quickly. Now, that doesn't bode for the engine. I'm just saying I don't see many of them, and it's kind of, I wish I did, because
I want something different. I want options, right? I want options.
There's a reason why, everybody loves Fede, because, why not have a Ferrari?
Yeah,
right?
fuck it.
That's sick.
And the same reason people like Dean Carney, and the same reason people like, I mean, there's a lot of different drivers in there. Even Kyle Mohan, great example. Like, it's a strange, I want to see how he does. Like, that's it. Who else? Darren Kelly, I don't know enough about. I apologize to any of his fans. I want to learn more.
Jeff Jones, he was on a bit of a rise last year.
Yeah, he's doing another chassis as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really?
Or he's at least doing some sort of updates. I know there's a new dash rule that's coming in. Like, it has to be the stock dash.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which is kind of a strange one, but I think it's I don't know. I don't know what it's for.
That's kind of like the pedal box thing for ProSpec.
Yeah. Adam LZ, I mean, see what he does in the Mustang. Like, see what he does not having to worry about his team. That's what I want to see.
That's it.
Head in the game.
Whether you love him or hate him, he is good for the sport in the sense of more people watching it is better for everybody. And I want to see him in a competitive chassis and on a level playing field. Like, nobody's on a level playing field really with, the Denovas and the Osbos and stuff like that. I will say, because one, they have more development behind them in those cars.
Yeah.
But I really think that LZ, even if he doesn't do well where he places this year, it could be huge for driver development. Learning how to be with a team and this isn't anything against his team last year or the year before, just you're with a team that knows what's up, right? Like, those guys don't fuck around. The RTR race team, they're there to win. They are not there to sell t-shirts and stuff. They're there to win.
Yeah. I mean, they do that, but I know what you're saying. Like,
but they have a department. I'm not taking anything away from that. I just mean that they have somebody that goes out and sells t-shirts, and they also have somebody inside that they just have the resources to be able to put together a full race program, versus the LZ team. It seemed like they're stretched way too thin because it is expensive and they have a lot on the go, and that's how they pay for it, right? That's how they pay for their season. So him being in a factory, in a larger team that's more backed, where all he has to do is show up and drive, I think it's going to do well for him. Take a lot of the mental game out of it, because he doesn't have to worry about the car, and he doesn't have to worry about, just if something doesn't work, he just tells somebody. It's not. He doesn't have to get on the phone and call for parts or whatever. He just tells somebody.
Or, I mean, the biggest thing too is they have notes. Like, they have documents of like, this is what you do for this track, and we start here and then we adjust to your taste.
And they are a team. Like, they're not a team where it's two drivers competing against each other and they're sharing a trailer. They are a team where they are shared. Like, Vaughn and Chelsea share notes, right? Like, up until, I mean, they sure as hell want to beat each other, but they're definitely helping each other get faster. And I think that's going to be a huge boost for him, and that it's Chelsea. Like, he's known Chelsea for a long time. Chelsea seems to likes to teach, right? He is a good teacher. So, yeah,
it'll be interesting for sure. Yves Meyer, Kyle Mohan, Nick Novak. I mean, I'm happy to see more of these ProSpec guys moving up. I'm very, very happy to see that. I mean, it's what it's there for. It's what it's there for.
But the good thing with that this year is that's really going to put the pressure on the people who have been in pro and not performing.
Yeah.
Because these guys, you have Mike Power. Do you think he's going to come in and go, I'm okay with last place? I don't think so.
He's a fucking savage, super nice guy. I mean, absolute sweetheart of a human being. But behind the wheel, he's a fucking monster.
You know, and Nick Novak, the guy can drive, right? Like, so these guys aren't going to come in and give it 80%. So if you're not on your game, if you're a pro and you're not on your game, you know, you're not going to make it anywhere this year. I don't think.
Yeah. The other one that we haven't touched on at all, I feel bad because I love the guy, is Alec Robbins. He is the amount of, what was the one event where like he made it top 4? Well, yeah.
So
he's qualified
Louis,
first.
Number 1 qualifier. Yeah. And he was doing so well and he got taken out in, what was that? Outer 3. Well,
the last
inner
zone.
1, I guess it is.
Oh, okay.
Like, yeah, that last, around the hairpin.
Yeah.
He hit the back wall. So
right.
And that just like, you could tell he was on one, and it could have been tires, it could have been anything, but like,
yeah,
that weekend you could see like anybody who thought he didn't belong there had their mouth shut.
Oh my God.
He had it. Without that crash, if he would have put down the same runs that he was doing all day, he was definitely on the podium.
Yeah. He's one event away from being on the podium. Like it could happen literally anytime.
I feel like he's kind of in that position that Dylan Hughes was in a year or two ago, right on that cusp of like getting there.
They're the same class, realistically. Like him, Travis Reeder, like they're the kind of the true second gen or third generation of driver, realistically.
I mean, it's outsider perspective, but I feel like Dylan got a little bit more of a boost with, you know, being part of the Forsberg crew.
Yeah. And he also didn't have a year of driving an electric Camaro. Like,
there you go.
That puts you, I mean, obviously he drove his S13 a whole bunch of that, but it still puts you a year behind.
Yeah.
And funding and everything else, because then he had to go back solo. And yeah, I mean, it's tough. I can't remember who his title sponsor is.
Who, Alec?
No, sorry. Travis Reeder.
Oh, Reeder? Wasn't it Link?
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Link.
Remember.
I have their car pack in Assetto.
Oh.
Fun fact. His car is one of my favorites.
Nice. Brandon Sorensen. I can't believe fuck that up. It's like the easiest name on the list. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say. Like
he's got some work to do, but at the
natural talent, he has a lot of it.
Buckets.
Maybe it's just like maturing into it in the sense of knowing when to push. Because last year it's like he pushed at the wrong times, and when he needed to push, he didn't. Or, again, you don't know the whole story. It could have been car issues or whatever it is, but we know that family and race team has development money, right? Like they're going to come with a strong car this year, I believe. So
and seat time and and they also have like the knowledge. The team that is on there are it's a motorsports team, not just like drifting. So, you know, part of it is going to be that they're going to have some learning. I mean, they in the beginning they had to learn drifting coming from off-road and other motorsports as well. But like, I know they have hired crew that are very knowledgeable with drifting.
Yeah.
So it's like you mix that with, you know, the funding and the backing, and then just a motorsports heritage of understanding the logistics and the sponsorship and everything else. Like,
and I think that's what it seems to take for a lot of these people to get to that next tier, right?
Yeah.
And there are the exceptions of the guys that can, you know, work through it without it, but most of these guys kind of hit that next gear when they have the motorsports package behind them, like the full development team, the full funding, and again, that's also showing the sport as a whole is growing, right? It's not just, you know, cut rate tire companies and whatever. It's the sponsors are big name stuff, and the money's coming. I
mean, like outside of drifting, just the idea of Sorensen Motorsports coming into drifting. Like, I feel like that wasn't, I feel like a lot of people didn't realize like the background. And then,
True.
you know, within drifting, I mean, it'd be like if Randy Popst came over and became a drifter. It'd be like, what the fuck? Like, yeah, like, of course.
Why are you here? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what else do you need to do? Or like, I mean, yeah, it's just
Or a drag racer or whoever, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I'd love to see like an ex-Formula One guy come into drifting. It's like, could you imagine?
I've had very long conversations with certain people about that and arguments about it. They don't think that it's on the same playing field. So
it's different. It's definitely different.
Yep. I can tell you something. There are some F1 drivers that could benefit from some drift lessons. You know?
Is he still an F1 driver, or are we talking about Nikita Mazepin? I know what you're saying now.
Say that on the internet, but sure.
Are you even allowed to say his name anymore? Like,
I didn't. You did.
I don't know. I know you didn't.
Did you finish Drive 5, by the way?
No, I got 2 episodes in, and then I need to finish it before this weekend. My goal is to have it completely wrapped up before this weekend. So, yeah,
we binged it. So
I might watch an episode or 2 tonight. It is getting late, but I might.
Yeah.
Yeah. Outside of that, I mean, is there anybody else on this list that you're like? I'm always excited to see new guys that I don't know a lot about. It's always my favorite.
So that's it. I'm more excited for Pro Spec. Like, to be honest, up until a couple of years ago, I didn't follow any Pro 2 or Pro Spec. Mm-hmm. But I'm more excited about it now as the cars are getting so much closer to FD, but also with the restrictions that they have with the tire width and you know, they have to run with the factory pedals and pedal box and whatnot. So I'm excited there. I like being able to see people in 2 different series at once. So Lemaire is cool because I want to see how he does here versus DMCC, because it, to me, lets me line up the 2 different series, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
there's like, I think, I mean, at least in Pro Spec, there's a good mix of like old school guys. I mean, Andy Haley, like, that dude's like, I feel like he was like the first day of Pro 2. He might be.
Yeah.
He's got a new car too.
I mean, I like Ricky Hoffman. I'm a big fan of his from, I follow Scotty Kramer. So.
Oh, okay. I mean, Adam Napick, TLO, obviously, like you said, Derek Madison, another guy that's like due. Yeah. Derek Madison is due.
Ben Hobson.
Austin Mata, like Dustin Miles. I love watching him drive. Miles Styles, man. Fuck.
So I like his, he had a pretty good swag to him in last year.
Yeah.
At Clutch Kickers. So.
Blake Olson, Human Rahimi. Human, dude, you don't call me enough. I hope you're listening. I love Human. I very much miss hanging out with him. Kelsey Rawlings is like one solid car not breaking away from getting her pro license. Like, that's what I talked to her at. I talked to her at Long Beach last year, actually, and she was having car. I mean, just car issues. That's what seems to be holding her back.
Yeah, I saw her compete at Clutch Kickers, and she was doing really well there. But then she had a car issue as well.
One day. And then Brian Wadman, Rich Whiteman. I mean, guys there's a lot of guys that were in Pro 2, now in Pro Spec, that are like, they're just due. They're due. They've put in their time. Like, but
there's only so many spots, man.
I know.
Right?
I know.
And again, I get the problem with it. Like, it's tough. You got 4 rounds that you got to go to, and there's so much other stuff going on, and it's not cheap. Like, you know firsthand what the cost is.
You're 20 grand at least. Right.
So, and then
you can definitely do it cheaper, but I'm just like,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Trust me, you don't want to do it much cheaper.
But even then, if you do, so let's say you do get your pro license and you can barely afford Pro Spec, then what do you do?
Yeah. I like, a lot of people, it's one of the biggest things.
Getting it. You need money.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest things that, like, I wish people would wrap around their head. Like, it's so fucking expensive. And it's not like
free,
sponsors are just jumping at you like, oh, you got your pro license? Here's a check. Like, nope. Nope. Not even a little bit. They're like, oh, it's your first year in pro. Let's see how you do. And then let's talk next year.
Like last year, we went to that shootout, and there were a couple of drivers there, and the prize was a pro license, and it was a joke in the sense that the guys in the top already had their pro license, but they couldn't afford to compete.
Yeah, Pat Sear and Dave Briggs both drove FD Pro at one point in time.
Yeah.
And both of them were like, yeah, why would I? I mean, Pat owns a successful garage and Dave Briggs is a real estate agent.
Yeah.
A very successful one from what I understand.
It was still pretty sick to see the 8.6 out there.
Yeah, the Battle Axe, that was sick.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing that thing still drives. It's the way that he drives it. But yeah, it'll be good. I mean, I think there's two things, obviously, one thing we definitely need to talk about, another one that's cool. One, Lake Erie Speedway doing an event series to get your pro spec license. No shootout.
It's a full series.
It's a series.
And with decent payouts, I think round 3 has like, I want to say it's $7,500 for first or something. Like that's going to bring some people in.
It's going to bring Canadians in. That's what I'm excited for.
So I was just about to say that's to us up here. Like, I don't know if everyone knows how far it is or how hard it is for us to get to FD events. When FD stopped coming to Montreal, even though it was only there for a short time, it's not impossible, but it's hard to get there. So having an event close by that is drivers that are getting up to FD caliber is exciting, and to see people from here get a chance to get their license, because DMCC, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's kind of, the rules are close to FD, but it feels like the cars aren't at that level yet. So it's kind of, or maybe they never will be. It's just a totally different style of driving. So it's like, it feels like if you're in Canada, you're relegated to DMCC. But if that's not the style of driving you want to do, even to get down to events to qualify to get a pro spec license is a huge undertaking.
Yeah, you're going to a shootout. Hoping.
That's what I mean.
You're going to a shootout.
Yeah, you're going to a shootout and hoping that you have a good weekend. Hoping that nobody else is there to steal your thunder, no locals around, right?
Yeah.
So I think Lake Erie Speedway is going to be huge for them, and it's also during their Mat Series, which seems like it's a blast. So I'm planning to go to probably not spring, but the one in summer.
All right. So, well, I mean, I'll be going to as many as I possibly can, but I do think it's massive. So if I mean, once again, it's totally self-serving because AJ is a good buddy of ours. But I mean, why else am I doing this if it's not self-serving? If you're even if you don't want your pro spec license, if you just want that level of driving in a series instead of just one round, like Erie Speedway is going to be it, at least in our area.
And like I said, and there's money there too, right?
Yeah, to make it worth your while. And then the other one, I don't know if you know about this one. This is sick, and I'm super excited for it, is that Toronto Motorsport Park has a house league for drifting.
So I heard that they were drift jams going there.
Yeah, but I don't know the rules. I'd love to have the drift jam guys on, because it's fascinating that they're doing this, because it's like a competition, but not really. Like from my understanding, it's supposed to be like a mix of like party drifting and competition. But I think the competition layout isn't a traditional bracket style. So
it sounds similar to like how Mat Series was built with Lake Erie Speedway, right?
Yeah, it was a split of
like
both.
A party event. Yeah, party event with a comp in the middle.
Yeah, I'm super excited that they can have this. Is like, we're gonna do a competition style, but without all of the fucking bullshit of having these high-end competitions, right?
And the good thing with TMP is it's exactly in the middle of my house and your house.
Yeah.
So
although
it's equal driving.
I mean, I could take the BMW there. I just don't know how well I would do. Starts at 9, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Yeah, it's it looks like it's like a stylish drifting competition. So
cool.
I'm pumped either way. I mean, I'm happy to see more competition. Obviously, Shannonville's got their drifting series, which replaced Top Drift. Top Drift
It's not a series. It's just like they're doing drifting there.
Yeah, open drifting.
Yeah.
And then Top.
I'm going on the 16th. But
are you?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So Top Drift, they're doing 2 events out near you, no?
Yeah, up at Calabogie. Or not Calabogie, Cayuga. No. Grand Bend. Fuck. Thank you.
Yeah, Grand Bend. Yeah. No, so I was on Calabogie to try and get some events. The problem they have is there is a local club here that was doing stuff, and then they kind of slowed down. So it's tough because the track there it's a high caliber racetrack, and they're very looked down on drifting a little bit. So yeah, you might get the paddock, but because I had inquired like on renting it, I was like, man, like how much? Like I can get some homies together and rent, but it was too much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm happy to see, I mean, to kind of lead into wrapping things up, I'm happy to see massive drivers lists.
Yeah.
We didn't really touch on Forrest Wang, but I mean, we kind of did, but anyways, Sebastian Gauthier is another guy that got booted out of that. But we'll see. I mean, as Ryan Sage said, the opportunity to come in is there. It's just, they had to cap it. And if you want to see a better explanation, check out Maximum Driftcast discussion board because they talk about it. I mean, if you're here, you probably are there too. Let's be honest. But yeah, I'm happy to see both those drivers lists massive. As much as it sucks to see Lake Erie off of the schedule, I'm stoked that there's a new track. And
that Lake Erie has that series.
Yeah.
Instead, right?
We're still seeing Drift Week get bigger and bigger, and Clutch Kickers is getting bigger and bigger. So like, yeah, other events have died off, which is sad, but it seems like for every one that is gone, 2 more have popped up, but different. And that's what I like to see.
More in Canada.
I just, honestly, like in Ontario, we just don't have the driver pool. I wish we did, but we just don't. There's just not enough people.
It's funny. There's a lot up in the Quebec side. But my French isn't good enough, so I'll have to bring my daughter to translate, I guess. There
you go. Just have one translator with you. Your crew chief. She'd boss you around anyways.
Because for me, they're only most of their events are within 2 hours.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I got the control arm off the BMW, kind of. I had to cut them off because everything is fucked on it. And the subframe is bent from me, so I can't get the one bolt out because it's now wedged between that and the front sway bar bracket.
Huh.
Yeah. So I don't know when I did that. I mean, I know I did it, but I mean, I don't remember when.
I have a bunch of parts coming for the BMW subframe reinforcement kit, and then I'm going to make some parts. I got like the world's cheapest coilovers going on it, and yeah.
We got to bang doors this year. It has to happen.
100%.
Has to happen.
Yeah. We'll start in sim drifting because you got to go this week. So.
All right. Yeah, let's pick a night. We got to pick a night. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Buddy,
I know you're on every night.
I was like, I'm on every night except for tonight. So.
Cool. Do you want to do any shout outs? You got your own YouTube channel that I'm constantly forcing you to do more of.
Yeah. I mean, the point of it is going to be drifting this year, right? I'm going to build the BMW and kind of, not going to do like a build log of it or anything, but hopefully go out to some events. And I want to make it out to 1 or 2 FD events for the year and then put that on the YouTube channel. So that's the life of Kai. So
if you can make it here, I'll get you there.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem, right? Is making it there and then having the time. Right?
Yeah.
Like anything else, it's time because it's the travel. Again, being where we live up in Canada, or at least where I live, it's almost like an extra day because you lose an extra half a day either way to get anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just to get the fuck out of the country. That's literally the only reason I moved to Windsor is to save that extra day.
Yeah. Driving across the border for you is nothing, right? And then you can just hop on a plane and go. So.
Yeah. Well, for everybody listening, there is a YouTube version of this if you want to see our faces. If not, I totally understand. For everybody watching, thank you. Make sure to check out Life of Kai. I'll put I'll try and remember to put a link down.
Thank you.
If you guys like the podcast, if you want to keep going, I'm not going to lie. I need encouragement because I'm petty. But if I know you guys are listening and I know it's happening, I will make more of them. It's just very discouraging sometimes. I won't lie. It can get very discouraging to try and produce these. But we've had some crazy numbers before. I mean, I've had 10,000 listener episodes. So,
and I'm sure if there's people out there who want to see it, we can get a couple of the people on here, and you could probably bug Mr. Hurst, get him on, and
I got to get Hurst on. I have to.
Yeah.
I want to get Alec back on.
Yeah.
I mean,
see if you can bug Josiah so we can pick his brain about what the hell's going on.
Yeah. Know? Yeah. I still think it's crazy because I've had like Kevin Wells on here. I've had Ryan Sage on twice. Like
that's wild.
It is wild. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, why didn't I do more of this? I mean, we have fucking Tony Angelo, Matt Farah. I think I had Matt Field on it. I did have Matt Field on. Fuck.
That's wild.
I have to do
You know
this
what
more
you
often.
need to do is do a mobile version of it at the rounds of FD.
You know what? I've tried doing the mobile. It's so much work. It's so much work to set it up. But I know what you're saying. Even if they're
If you
just
had two
quick, like
people,
interviews.
Like if you have our other media guy there, or if I'm there, won't be as bad to have someone else help
build a
set
little
up.
packet.
That's it. Yeah. Your go bag, you know?
Yeah.
But,
all right. Well, thank you for everybody listening. If you did make it this far, make sure to share, comment, let us know. Keep me encouraged. Like I said, I get discouraged so quickly. Kyle will stay on my ass about it for sure. I'm not going to say weekly. Sure. I think if I say every other week, I was going to say
I think every other week is a little bit more attainable. And then,
people don't realize how long this takes.
Content. Yeah, that's all content, right?
Yeah. Oh, we're like 2 hours, so
yeah,
it's crazy how quick it goes, though, huh?
I mean, it's not like you or I struggle with talking, so
I know it's such a problem. I don't know how we get any fucking actual work done.
I don't talk all day long.
You just save it up for when we. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you liked our opinions, let us know. If you don't like our opinions, I don't care.
Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Dude, they will.
Out of the way.
It happens I get like private DMs like, you fucked this up. That didn't happen. It was this year. And I'm like, okay, whatever. You talk for 2 hours straight and try not to say something wrong.
I think you're going to light it up with all the electric comments. I think we're good.
Yeah, probably. I know we offended a few people. All right, guys. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next week. No, 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
2 weeks.